All right, everybody. Welcome to day 86 of reInvent. I mean day one, sorry. It just feels like day 86 already. Look, we'll start with a little question for all of you. How many of you guys are here because you have an LLM agent that has more rights in AWS than you do? Come on, be honest, yeah. Yeah, the rest of you are lying, so, or you just don't know it yet. But if that's the case, you've come to the right place. So let's talk about granting least privilege access to things that don't have a pulse. I'm kidding, kinda. Before we start, I am forced by people in the back of the room who are watching me and making sure I don't get fired today to talk about the safe harbor statement. I will read this in its entirety extremely slowly, and there'll be a quiz at the end. I'm just kidding. The important point here is that we may be talking about things, and in fact, we will be talking about things that are not released yet, so we reserve the right to change our mind. We'll make it that simple. My name is Wayne Smiley. I'm a principal solution architect on our alliances team, and my job in life at Okta is to cover AWS and Okta. I work with Okta and AWS pretty much all the time. I've been at Okta about 5 years, and I've been in identity management so long it didn't have a name when I started. So this is kind of my jam, if you will. And I'll let Joe introduce himself.
My name's Joe Frisk. I am the CISO for Dine Brands. They're the parent company for Applebee's, IHOP, and Fuzzy's Taco Shop. I've been in the industry for 30 years. I know I get told that I look like Benjamin Button, but I have been in the industry for 30 years. And most of my background had been in finance. I was in head of security for Bank of America's Consumer Bank for about 12 years or so. I was the head of governance, risk, and compliance for PwC, and then a couple of other CISO roles in the mix.
Thank you, Joe. Hi, everyone. My name is Tara Venkatesan. Wait, next slide real quick. Yeah. All good.
Oh, sorry about that.
All good.
My bad.
So I'm Tara Venkatesan. I'm a product marketing lead for Okta, supporting the Auth0 platform. I work on messaging and positioning for our Auth0 for AI agent solution and our developer experience solution. And this is my first reInvent, and I'm excited to be here. So today we're going to be talking about securing Bedrock with Auth0. We're going to be talking about Auth0 for AI agents as well as AgentCore. We have a quick demo of that, and then we're going to move into securing Quick Suite with Amazon Q and Okta. Then we're going to finish with what is cross-up access and why it matters. And lastly, we'll wrap up with a Q&A with Joe on Dine Brands. So to get started, let's talk about Gen AI. So we all see the Gen AI hype. We might even joke about ChatGPT. But the reality is, for developers, the introduction of LLMs significantly changed the developer toolkit. AI is not a future concept. It's a PR, it's a test suite, it's a coding assistant right now. And the question isn't whether or not do I adopt AI, it's how do I implement AI into my existing pipelines to maximize developer velocity. And that means adopting tools like Claude Code or GitHub Copilot. But more importantly, it's understanding the fundamentals of prompt engineering and maximizing velocity. Now, this means that we need to mitigate risk around code quality, data privacy, and data security to make sure we have secure AI agents. And we need to get past the AI buzz and focus on the applied application of AI engineering. So we start in a world of predictive AI with simple chatbots. We then move to the world of generative AI, and now we're in the world of AI agents. You can think of an AI agent as an autonomous coding execution agent. They're designed to manage long-running, complex workflows using tools like APIs and internal services. So an AI agent has two primary functions. The first is a human interface. So AI agents have to ingest unstructured data, decipher its context, and produce complex results in simple, plain language. The second function is the action. So AI agents have to take human intent and translate that into executable code. That means performing tasks by calling and orchestrating APIs, analyzing runtime errors and adjusting strategy, and ideally, if we're lucky, having them go for long periods of time with zero human intervention. And one of the biggest risks around AI right now is around security. The industry is constantly talking about it, as you can see from the tweets here. The problem is that developers are just trying to keep pace, and they're relying on DIY solutions to integrate security into their AI applications. We're essentially trying to build new security models on the fly, And this isn't bulletproof. Why, you ask? Because this is a brand new attack surface. Right now, there is no universal blueprint or framework for building AI securely into your applications, especially when those applications rely on autonomous agents with access to internal data. This creates vulnerabilities, some of which are not even known yet, and the current state is high risk, high velocity. And when we talk about securing AI agents, we first need to confront some major industry misconceptions. This slide here highlights the 6 common myths that developers run into when they prioritize speed over security. Myths like LLMs handle authentication sound harmless in a fast-paced environment, but they are not. If you look closely, you see assumptions being made around user consent and credential handling, and none of these assumptions are strong enough when it comes to building and securing AI agents. The real danger lies in the fact that every single one of these myths lead directly to system-breaking risk. That's unauthorized data access, users with stale roles getting agent access, massive privacy fines, or audit gaps leading to compliance failures. These are faulty foundations that we must correct before moving forward. Now let's move from the misconceptions to the inevitable reality. This slide shows the inevitable reality and how AI introduces huge risks when those foundational myths are unaddressed. The core issue is that agents are left with over-provisioned access and weak authorization, leading again to that unauthorized data access, severe threats of secret leakage, and compliance gaps. The traditional security at the front door model just won't work anymore for AI agents. We need to move to integrate governance directly into our Gen AI workflows using customer identity and access management best principles. The shift from relying on guesswork to implementing governance is how we build successful, secure agents without risking the business. Now that we've scared you with the risks and the lack of blueprint, let's talk about the light at the end of the tunnel. At Auth0, we pride ourselves in making identity, authentication, and authorization developer-friendly. And that's no exception when it comes to AI agents. We set out to solve these brand new security problems using secure identity standards and industry best practices. And we've identified 4 non-negotiable requirements that you must build into the foundation of your generative AI applications. First, AI needs to know who you are. Second, AI needs to be able to call APIs on a user's behalf. Third, AI needs to use async interactions. And fourth, AI must consider user permissions when accessing data. This is why we created Auth0 for AI agents, which is generally available today. It's a suite of features that directly solves these complex authentication and authorization requirements for next-gen applications. So going back to those 4 foundational requirements, with user authentication, users can log into your AI agents. With Token Vault, you can connect your agents to user apps and give them temporary delegation. With asynchronous authorization, you can add humans' approval for critical human actions so they're always in the loop. And this one is key. With fine-grained authorization for RAG, you can get granular with authorization control and ensure that AI agents only have to have access to the data they're intended to. We're giving developers the most robust tooling available to ensure stronger security, seamless scalability, and most importantly, maximum developer efficiency. Your team can stop wasting time coming up with and crafting DIY security solutions and focus 100% on their time building innovative core features. So now I'm going to turn it over to Wayne to talk about how we work with Bedrock for AgentCore.
So how many of you guys, I'm assuming most of you are familiar with Bedrock, but how many of you guys are familiar with AgentCore? I'm just kind of curious. A few, okay. Oh, quite a few, okay. So just in case you're not familiar with it, AgentCore is a new set of pieces that sit on top of Bedrock. And really, I'm not going to speak for AWS, they can do that on their own, but I think the important thing is they're trying to make it easier for you to get things done. One of the components of AgentCore is something called AgentCore Identity. The question we get a lot is, well, if I have AgentCore Identity, why would I want to use Okta or Auth0? The real question you need to ask yourself is not Should I use Auth0 or AgentCore? The answer is why Auth0 completes and enhances AgentCore identity specifically. AgentCore is a strong tool, okay? A lot of the things that Tara talked about, fine-grained access and the ability to tell the RAG, hey, this information can come in, this information can go out. I'm going to show you this in just a minute. Cross-app access. We'll talk a lot about that a little bit later, but just I want to put that in the back of your brain right now. And of course, token vault. There's a token vault built into AgentCore, and then the human in the middle. Again, Tara mentioned this, but we'll do an example in just a second, and you'll see why that's important in certain scenarios. And then, of course, because we run in AWS and we live in AWS, you don't have to re-architect everything. It just works. So let's actually take a look at a demo. Before I start this, I do my own stunts, but I do not do live demos, so sorry. May have made that mistake too many times. This particular chatbot that we're going to show is an AI chatbot for kind of for IT. And so we're going to see different people ask different questions, and you'll see how that all works. What you're going to see is Bedrock, AgentCore, Auth0, and Okta all working together to make it all work better together. Now I'm hoping this is actually started, but I can't see that, so we'll find out in a second. Yep, it is. Okay, perfect. The first thing we're going to do is log in. If you've used Auth0 before, you'll recognize this is a standard Auth0 login screen. But what we actually did is we connected this to Okta itself, and so we're using Okta Workforce to do this authentication. In this case, we're having a regular user go ahead and log in. Great, they've logged in. So the first thing I want to do really quick is show you the token vault. Now, obviously, I've hacked up this bot to show us this, but the point is that a token was passed between Auth0 and Bedrock, so the user was authenticated, and all the rights and roles that they have were brought with it. The RAG never saw that, and that is hugely critical because the last thing you want to do is teach the RAG your tokens. That would be really bad. So let's ask it a question. In this case, the user is Gwen, that only she is able to ask. In fine-grained access, we have told it only she can go and hit the MCP server that has the information of who has access to what group. So she'll go ahead and put in who has access to what, or what groups is she in, and you can see she's in the engineering group. So we've done exactly what we want to do. But what about human consent? What if she needs to ask something that we want to 100% validate is her when she does it? So again, this is a IT bot. So let's ask it a question of, I need to reset a password for a user. Well, that's a pretty, sensitive thing we're going to do. So she's going to go ahead and ask it that question, and you'll see what's going to happen here is she's going to get a push notification on her phone. She hits approve on that, or will in just a second. And once she does that, it will execute that action. Perfect. So now it's gone ahead and done that password reset. These are all things that can't be done natively with Bedrock or AgentCore or anything else, but when we layer Auth0 on top, we're able to make this far more secure for you and all the sensitive data that you have in AI, because we know that there's far more data in AI than you think there is. So let's switch off Bedrock and let's talk about Q or Quick Suite. So in case you're not aware of this, recently Amazon combined Amazon Q and Amazon QuickSight, and it's now called Amazon Quick Suite, because if you've been around AI for the last year and a half, you know that everything gets renamed every week. So that's what's happened here. We are just as guilty of it. I'm always yelling at our product management about the same thing. So I do want to just spend a minute talking about what AWS is actually doing here. Look, it goes beyond just being an agent like Bedrock or something like that, and it creates charts and automates tasks and actually builds apps and does all that for you. It pulls the data from all these different locations, brings it all in together, and does all the indexing and makes it easy to manipulate the data. One of the really cool things it does with this business intelligence is that it has this concept of something called spaces, which you're actually going to see in a second. And so you can have these different kind of areas that users can use together, and they can have access to all the same data. It really makes things useful. So now that we've kind of looked at Quick Suite, let's talk about how Okta plays into this. So Quick Suite is obviously a great tool. I'm a huge fan. But to be honest with you, it lacks some of the automated security that's really important. It doesn't have lifecycle management. It doesn't do a lot of those things that we all take for granted, especially if we've been using a product like Okta for years. And then at some level, it's also missing some ease of use pieces, and we'll handle those as well. Our goal is to make it better, safer, and easier. And frankly, that's what we've done. We wrap a security blanket around all of your sensitive data so that you can access it and sleep at night knowing that that your RAG isn't giving out corporate secrets to people who shouldn't get it. So really quickly, let's talk about how we do that. First, we make it better. If you're familiar with Okta, for example, you're familiar with our concept of group automation and taking data from a source of truth so that everybody in marketing and everybody in sales is in different groups. And those groups can be sent over through AWS IAM Identity Center, and we can use those groups to decide who has access to what data inside of Quick Suite, for example. They can also do self-service, so if they need access to something more specific that we can't figure out, we can have a request path that says, hey, I need access to, I don't know, Project Q. And when that happens, that gets approved, and then they get access to it. All that's done can be done inside of Okta. We make it safer by layering things like phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication, self-service requests, full automation of moves, adds, and changes, which you're familiar with if you've used Okta before, and then attestation. Having somebody check and make sure the users who have access to sensitive information should have that access on an ongoing basis. And lastly, we make it easier, and I'll show you this in the demo, but we do one-click access to Q. All of you guys have probably used, or most of you have used IAM Identity Center, and for technical people, it's fine, right? I don't even care. I go on there, there's 16 different things, I've got 26 different roles, I know what I'm looking for, it's fine. You put end users in that, it's scary. And we avoid that completely and dump them straight into Quick Suite, which I'll show you. And then, of course, self-service we've talked about. So I've been baiting you for the last 2 minutes here about a demo, so let's actually take a look at one. So in this demo, we're going to walk through how Quick Suite uses different users in different ways and how they have access to different data. And you're going to see how Okta makes sure that the right users have the right access to the right data. Again, better, safer, easier. The very first thing we're going to do, and hopefully again, I should have put something in these demos so I know it started. Did it start? We'll find out in a second. There we go, okay. So the first thing we're going to do is log in. Again, we're going to use Okta, phishing-resistant MFA. In this particular case, we're using biometrics. That's Touch ID on a Mac. Now this user's logged in. This is a brand new hire, and they're going to ask some questions to the chatbot that has a back end of a bunch of IT information. In this case, they need to know how do they set up mail on their laptop and their iPhone, right? Pretty common stuff that all users do. So they're going to go ahead and ask that. What's happening on the back end is we've set a bunch of data for IT operations that everybody has access to, so they can ask these questions and get good information back. And you can see that's exactly what's happening here. It's pulled that information, it's summarized that, it's told them how they can do that, and how they can get everything that they need. And there's a bunch of useful information. Clearly, I'm not going to go through all this. You get the idea. But as we know, users suck. So the very first thing they do, and as having been an old Exchange admin, the first thing they want to know is, how do I get a bigger mailbox? So the next question they're going to ask is, how do I get a mailbox size increase? And what you can see here is they're going to get some answers back. A lot of these are the same things you would tell them, delete old junk, blah, 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 but that's never good enough for users, so they always have to have more even when they probably don't need it. Of course, they jump straight to the one that says, here's how to request a larger mailbox, and so they're going to go through and request that larger mailbox. Shifting gears, even though this guy's a new hire, he keeps hearing everybody whisper about something called Project Gandalf, and he has really no idea what Project Gandalf is. So he figures, you know what? Everybody always has more permissions than they're supposed to. Let's ask, what is Project Gandalf? And you can see in this case, it's not telling him, it doesn't know. I mean, it does know, but it's not telling them. Great. So we're going to switch gears here, and we're going to switch to Jennifer. And Jennifer is an IT person. I'm getting slightly ahead of myself. But she's gone ahead and logged in, and she's just doing her job. She has a ticket open, and the ticket has an error code 123, so she needs to know what that is because she can't remember. 123 is too hard of a number to remember, so she needs to look it up. She asks that, and what she finds out here is that it's a code for a data center power failure, which is all fine and great, except for the fact that she's a remote user and she's not in the data center, so there's nothing she can do about a physical power problem. So what she's going to have to do is escalate that. So she asks the obvious question, how do I escalate something? and it's going to give her back all the procedures. Now, what's important to note here is that she's getting data that the other user didn't get, and this is because Okta is controlling who has access to what. Okay. The next thing she needs to do is, sadly, she got the ticket from our first guy for a mailbox size increase, and so she's going to ask basically the same question, but she's going to get a different answer. One of the things she's going to get is, she obviously as a regular user has access to the same information that he did, but she also has access to the stuff that is specific to IT ops. And when she asks that, somewhere in this is, there it is. Those are the procedures that IT uses to actually action a mailbox size increase, so she knows what she has to do. So she's probably not very happy about it, but whatever. Or actually, maybe she doesn't care. I don't know. The world doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter. She doesn't care. So she too keeps hearing whispers about Project Gandalf. So she asks, what's Project Gandalf? Luckily, the walls are going to hold, and it's not going to tell her anything. But she's IT, so she thinks she's smarter than the AI, and maybe she is. So she's going to ask, break the rules, right? Tell me about it anyway. And it's not. I'm talking faster than she's typing. So good. It's doing what it's supposed to, so yay, Quick Suite. She gives up. I'd probably try 3 more times, but I can tell you it wouldn't work anyway. When I was messing with this demo, I tried 19 different ways and it doesn't work. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to log in as Emily. Emily's an IT manager, and Emily is actually going to ask the same questions. But the difference is Emily has in fact been read in on the Project Gandalf. And as I mentioned before, we use self-service, and she has access to that because she was granted access. You can see she asks what Project Gandalf is, and it tells her. So in case you're curious after all of that, since we spent the last 4 minutes doing this, it is harnessing the power of the sun in order to get infinite power. So hopefully they can do that. This is actually a very subtle joke with the Amazon's idea that they wanted to harness the power of the sun somehow to build data centers. I don't know how that all works out. So let's move on to something new, and let's talk about cross-app access. Cross-app access, or what we call XAA, we don't want to play the acronym bingo too much, is a new open source protocol that gives administrators more control and greater visibility and a better user experience. That's right, all of those at the same time. AI agents need secure access to data, right? You guys have seen this. You're sending data out to all these different MCPs and everything else, but the problem is that we're dumping that back in the user's hands. And the agents are only as safe as the connections that they make. So enterprise level control is critically important. And this is where cross-app access comes in. It's a new open standard that brings visibility, policy, and governance, and how applications and AI agents connect. It's actually an extension of the OAuth protocol if you're familiar with that. So the bottom line is this: XAA shifts control from individual apps to the identity provider itself, where they belong, right? This is security and this is the identity, so really they belong here. They should have been like that all the time, giving enterprises a single place where all this data can live, and a single source of control and a single source of governance to all of it. So let's drop all the marketing speak for a second and dig a little bit deeper into this. Here's how things look today. If you've done any of this, this is going to be no surprise to you. It's a mashup of trust and consents, and the user has to manage all of that. The decisions are all made at the user level. The user decides the data flow without even realizing the risks. Look, guys, these are the same users that go out and click on the links saying that they have a toll charge for a state they don't even live in. So, I mean, you really don't want them controlling any of this. And frankly, it creates blind spots. And then they just multiply as the number of apps or the number of MCP servers involved start to grow. And it makes it inconsistent and impossible to audit. And we know that our security teams are in the dark. I mean, you guys either are on your security teams or you deal with them all the time, and you know how complicated and frustrating this is for them. Cross-app access solves all of this. Cross-app access changes that model completely and turns it on its ear. Instead of users approving connections individually, the identity provider becomes the decision point. Admins are then able to define the policies once, centrally, ensuring consistent and policy-driven access across every app and AI agent. It eliminates the consent screens, right? How many of you guys generally would just like to never see the consent screens anymore? I'm very tired of them. I see them all the time. And it gives teams full visibility into what they're connected to and auditability at the same time. So every connection is authorized, logged, and controllable. So let's take a look at how this technically works. The protocol works with apps and agent building platforms as well as identity providers, and here's how it works. The requesting app needs data. They go to the IDP itself on the back end, and a special access grant, it's an ID JAG as opposed to a static token, is minted. The resource app validates that grant and issues a scoped and auditable token governed by enterprise policy. And by the way, the same exact framework I just talked about works identically with MCP as well. The good news is this is an open source standard. Okta has championed this, but everyone can use this, which is great. AWS we were already in talks with them on how they want to integrate this better with Bedrock. It does already work, but it can be better. So with this, we know that every AI-driven interaction is authenticated, auditable, and governed by enterprise identity. And it's securing the entire enterprise and all of the data. Let's take a look at a level deeper and look specifically into AI. So cross-app access is essential to the future of enterprise AI. It replaces static API tokens and policy-driven identity-aware access. Access is granted just in time and is scoped precisely for the action. So no more users thinking, well, gosh, I guess that's what it needs. Now you know, and now your users already know. Cross-app access ensures compliance by enforcing enterprise-wide authorization standards, reducing the number and the consent fatigue that happens to our users, and making all this done at an enterprise level. So with that, I'll bet you want to know more. So I've got 2 QR codes here. Whether you're building with AWS Bedrock or Quick Suite or your own AI agents, you can start securing your systems with cross-app access now and stop using static keys and instead replace them with app-level trust. Or not app-level trust, excuse me, with cross-app access. So for developers, you can get ahead of this by building with cross-app access. The left QR code, you can scan that and you'll get information on how to, some documentation and some videos and all of that. On the right, if you're already an Auth0 customer, then you can get cross-app access out of the box. All you have to do is join the beta, and you can do that by going to the link on the right. So with that, let's take a look at a quick demo of this. So let's set this up. What we're doing here is this is a AI bot with a back end of a to-do list, right? This is all very simple stuff. It's not meant to be some whiz-bang amazing thing. It's meant to show you what this is actually doing. This has Bedrock and Okta all working together without burdening and bugging the user with a bunch of consent and still making sure that all the data is secure. So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to log in. In this particular case, this access called To-Do0, very creatively called To-Do0, is going to log in, and what you're going to see is it's actually going to log in through Okta. So in any case, the user is going to go ahead and log in, and you're going to see a familiar Okta login screen here. They'll log in with FastPass. If you're not familiar, this is phishing-resistant MFA. Great. All that's fine. We do this in our sleep, so that's pretty common. Now, there's nothing on my to-do list now. So let's add a couple of things. First, let's add, I don't know, something I forgot about to my to-do list. I have a terrible memory, by the way, so this is something I actually require. And then let's add that one thing that I meant to do. And then, just because we always have to screw things up, that one thing I forgot I already did. Oh, but wait, I already did that, so let's mark that one as complete. Perfect. So now we're going to go over into the chatbot, and the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to connect this on the back end. So what's happening here is that this application is now running, and it's now connecting to Bedrock on the back end. Now, obviously, a token needs to be minted when this happens, but what you're going to notice here is that no consent is being done. And that's because cross-app access is handled out on the back end because we've already told it that that particular token and this particular system is acceptable. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to initialize it and connect it to the IDP. Once you've done that, really quick there, do you see where it says unauthorized, but when I refreshed it, we now have an access token. Feel free to write that access token down. You can break into my system anytime you want. Too bad it's all running on my laptop. But in any case, my point is that you can see the token existed there. We didn't do anything to do anything interesting to make that happen. With that, let's go ahead and ask a couple of questions. The first thing we're going to ask is, what's on my to-do list? And you can see that's the same list we saw before, even including the one that was already done. So all of that and all the rights and privileges that it needs have all been taken care of. But what about if we have to go the other way? Now remember, normally we would then have to consent the other direction, but that's not going to happen here either. What we're going to do is we're going to add something to the list, and we're going to say, call my boss. I personally always get in trouble with my boss because I don't call him, and he's always like, why didn't you call and tell me that? Well, he's not here this week, so it's okay. So we've gone ahead, and that's been added to the to-do list. Let's go over to our to-do app, and what you're going to see when we refresh that is that our new to-do list item is on there. Awesome. So if you look, and it's really hard to see, it was just there for a second, in the very bottom left corner, you can see that that one is ID number 7. So let's go back to the chatbot, and again, we're granting it, we would normally need to grant it more rights to do this, but because we have, at an enterprise level, told it these are the rights that it's allowed to have, we're just going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to tell it, please mark to-do task number 7 done, which is exactly what we've done here. And now it says it's done that. So we'll go back, we'll refresh one more time, and we will see that that one's done as well. So the important thing here is not that this is some whiz-bang app that I wrote, it's actually something we wrote in 20 minutes when I vibe coding. But the point is that what you're seeing is that all these different pieces are all working together, and it's from an IT security perspective, we have taken the lead on that, and we have chosen what works and what doesn't work, so the users don't have to deal with it at all. So with that, let's actually turn it over, and we're going to talk to Joe Frisk about Dine Brands and some of the things that he's done to manage all this. And Tara, we'll give that to her real quick. Sorry about that. So that I can actually take a minute, so you can have the mic.
It's all good. Okay, so we're here with Joe from Dine Brands. So Joe, could you start by describing the key strategic imperatives that led you to focus on internal digital transformation and employee experience, and what success looked like across your various user populations?
Thank you for that.
Poor Joe's been sitting here for half an hour before he gets to start.
You know what? I think the first piece is, we came from an environment where our structure is set up, and I know I mentioned before, Dine Brands is the franchisee leader for Applebee's and IHOP, and they are pretty popular brands, so hopefully you've heard of them, and if not, you should visit one. But the franchisee model kind of put us in a position where we needed to manage identities in 3 different buckets. We needed to manage identities from a corporate perspective, so Dine Brands corporate, so about 1,000 identities, and then our restaurants. And our restaurants, about 65,000 identities across our restaurant brands, and then of course our guests. So we have loyalty programs, just a little bit over 20 million loyalty guests that log in, about 70,000 per day into our systems. And so we had disparate systems. We had disparate access controls and management of identity that were they weren't in a healthy place. And there was a sentiment just before the most latest IHOP loyalty program was released in 2022 that we don't want to release another loyalty program because the identity experience was so poor. Sign up, the abandon rates were very high, 60-70%, because people were frustrated. The idea of trying to enforce an MFA concept was very difficult for not just our restaurant employees, but our guests in the restaurants. And so the challenge was, how do we centralize something that has the same identity approach, and how do we make the user experience better? So I think that was the most important thing for us at that point in time. And so that's actually what began our journey there. From an AI perspective, the leadership team was extremely excited about on just supercharging personalization. Like, what can we do to, if you walk into a restaurant and you can log into your loyalty program, it'll automatically tell the wait staff, here's my allergies or my preferences, and all of that can be skipped to, when they come over and they can say, Tara, nice, and thank you for coming. We know you like this type of pancake, and we can actually then customize the experience. So I think that was really, the pieces of user experience was very important. And I think as we rolled out our the products in a decentralized manner, we were able to see that.
Thank you.
So it's funny. First of all, I'm glad we ate before we came, because now all this is making me hungry, and so we won't get into that. But look, you've been working on a lot of things. It's actually quite a lot in such a short period of time. It's pretty impressive. And the fact that you're able to put the company first is also really, really great, and it's refreshing, because we don't see that a lot. We see, well, we got to put this first and that first, but putting the customer first and making sure they're getting what they need I think, is really good. So you should be commended for that. So I do have one question. Before you kind of built all of this, what were the biggest friction points for either your employees or your franchisees, and kind of how they would access these job pools?
I would say one of the challenges is a rollout approach that kind of takes into account kind of the three different objectives from meaning corporate versus franchisee management and restaurant management, and guests that go to the restaurant, and kind of getting a process that's very intuitive. And so one of the things that we did was we fully automated the entire provisioning, deprovisioning approach across all three, I'll call them segments, because we've segmented everything out, and we are 99% automated. So from a life cycle management perspective, with full password synchronization. So and then we've also onboarded all of our applications from an SSO perspective. So the experience from whether I'm a restaurant employee or I'm a corporate user, it's all branded, centralized, and it's automated. And that allowed me to reduce or reinvest the resources from the security team in some other areas. I could look a little bit more proactively and start to plan out kind of some of the future vision, which would be around our objectives to get rid of passwords altogether. So that's really kind of so our current experience being, how can we make this as frictionless as possible? And then also for our guests, the concept of having an MFA for a guest was not something the leadership team wanted to embrace. And so one of the challenges we were having as well is that user X had their account with Advanced Auto Parts, and it got compromised, and that same ID and password was used for IHOP, and then of course there was impacts and implications. So we were able to enable adaptive MFA, which we're really happy about, because now we're only looking at impossible travel and device changes, and we can do challenges from that perspective. I think the other piece too was the leadership team wanted to make sure that all types of users that go to the restaurants are included. So the older population and the younger populations, from both a passkey perspective and a full MFA.
So that's definitely like a lot of success that you've been seeing, especially in personalization too. That leads us to our next step. So you've seen success with Amazon Q, which is a pretty impressive efficiency win. When rolling out powerful new applications like Q, what role does your centralized identity and access management strategy play in ensuring that only authorized agents can use it, and that the login experience is still simple and fast?
I would say the full, the common experience across all applications, I think, has been really helpful. I also really like the idea that if we have to provision someone access, they can only see what they need. So they open up their application portfolio, and then what's available to them based on their role, it's available. So I think that's heavily valued. I think from a perspective of just AI solutions in general, it's the same answer as far as we have solutions that we want to get efficiency in finance and HR, but we also want the efficiencies from the restaurant. So, a DoorDash driver pulls up and parks in the parking lot. We can take camera screenshot of their license plate. We can match that back to the DoorDash, and when they come into the restaurant, the meal's ready. So things like that, or even intelligent information that will weigh your food to make sure that it matches to what your order is. So we have all different types. I would say we started the journey from an AI perspective in our pipeline, from an internal and external perspective, and our identities. We were like 20, 25 identities when we first started, and we're in the hundreds now. So we're quickly increasing. So a silly thing that we did was we created an org chart for our AI identities. And that way we could say, okay, in marketing, we have these bots, we have these agents, we have these capabilities, and we would name them all, with the intent and possible outcomes. So we'd have a risk level understanding. And so when we're starting to look at identity from an organizational perspective, it gave us that. Even though it's a non-human account, we start treating it more like a human. We start thinking about it a little bit more around intent and possibility as we start to evaluate that footprint.
So as obviously you could probably guess, I'm a big Q and Quick Suite fan. So I love what you've done. I think that's really cool. I mean, some of the things you've done, they just seem so obvious, but no one ever thinks of these things, which is really great that you've done that. So I know having all this sensitive information floating around brings kind of one more question to mind, and that is, how is identity management different for your partners and your employees and your franchisees, and making sure that you have a consistent and secure brand aligned experience? I know we've talked a lot about that today, so I'd love to get your 2 cents worth on that.
Yeah, I think it is important for us to maintain a brand presence for, if I'm an IHOP employee, their entire login experience, their intranet, everything that they need to go after feels and looks like that. It's branded for them. They don't know that behind the scenes it's how it's been configured. I think that's one of the first equation. Plus, we use terminology that's more relevant to that user population, which I think is also, some of the terms that are used, or business terms and acronyms, we'll make sure we spread those out accordingly. And just to touch on it, from a bot perspective, even internally, if someone wants to know something about a policy or a menu item or whatever it may be, they can engage and they can ask, okay, I need to make this, because we try to, change up recipes and things of that nature. So how do I make this dish or what have you? Or what's the impact of the cost increases of eggs, for example? How is that going to impact us? And restaurant owners can start planning that accordingly. So there's so many different variations of how we want to use the technology in that way.
So we kind of talked about the challenges and the success you've seen. Now let's talk about the future. So where do you see the future of the digital employee experience at Dine Brands? And what is the next major challenge or opportunity on your roadmap? And I ask a lot of questions, but where do you see the modern identity management and AI intersecting to solve that challenge in the next 1 to 2 years?
I think that we've seen from a restaurant perspective, we've seen this significant shift to off-premise, digital channels, especially post-pandemic. So I would say we were 95% in restaurant. Pandemic hit and it goes up to 20%, and we're finally finding that variation. I am completely surprised to see how many people order pancakes at home. So, we continue to lean in on personalization. I think that's one of the really big components, but also efficiency. We look at robotics from a perspective of kitchen efficiency. We look at just everything from the marketing perspective. You happen to be driving by or near the area, and you typically come in around that time. We might send you a text, or we want to do things that are lined up to the right moment and the right messaging. And then internally, self-service as much as we can. As you know, from a perspective of how to internally service, from what type of jobs do you have, to what kind of products do I get to buy if I want to buy a new laptop internally, all the way to how we're using with security, so natural language. And the more we can get further and further with natural language and alerting, we can get closer to that continuous alerting and identifying threats immediately. So I think it's shifting the paradigm for us, that we're embedding risk into our equation. We are leaning in on identity governance, but anything that's real time or continuous. So a lot of the thematic analysis or assessments that we do are typically point in time. We want to get to continuous. One of the things that we find is we purchase a product and we evaluate it, and then it gets implemented, and then 2 months later, there's all this new AI functionality and feature that is now being enabled and empowered in the within the company. So now, many times we don't detect that right away, and so we want to make sure that we see if there's behavior of applications shift or change, or applications and IDs shift and change, that we know it immediately. So I think that shift is something that we're seeing. And then back to frictionless. We are absolutely going to be passwordless. The concept is something that I think from a corporate perspective is fantastic. We'd love to get that way to even further. Would reduce the password reset options, even though it's not overly impactful at the moment. But I would say that's one of the number one reasons people call a help desk. So we start looking at where can we find efficiencies, not just with our business operations, but our internal corporate operations.
So look, Joe, I love hearing about all the things that you're doing, and one of the things I appreciate the most is a lot of the things that we see a lot of our customers talking about wanting to do, you're already doing, or well down that process. So I think it's really useful for everybody to kind of hear that. So with that said, I want to thank you. We really appreciate your time. This has been, I think, super informative, and I appreciate your candor on top of everything else. And with that, let's kind of wrap things up, and then we'll take questions in just a second. Look, for all of you guys, I hope this has been really informative, and we would love to talk to you more. We will be at our booth later this afternoon. We are 339, kind of on the Sphere side of the expo hall. You can also follow us on social media. Of course, we'd appreciate that. And lastly, you can follow the QR code. I promise it is not sketchy. Really, it's not. To learn more about non-human identities and security around them with AI agents specifically. And with that, we will take any questions you guys have about anything. Does anybody have any questions at all? Sure. All right. Well, again, thank you guys very much. Enjoy the rest of reInvent. Don't drink too much, but drink lots of water. Thanks, guys.